I remember the first time he touched me. Really touched me. It was a Saturday night. Sierra had thrown one of her usual little gatherings. Wine, music, candles, a few couples talking too loud in the living room while the scent of cinnamon and red wine lingered in the air. The kind of night that started casual but always ended messy. I was in the kitchen, pretending to clean up. More like hiding, honestly. I needed a break from the noise. My husband had left earlier after an argument. He always finds a way to ruin good nights. I was leaning over the sink, hands in soapy water, when I felt him behind me. I didn't hear him walk in. He was like that, quiet, calm, always watching. His voice was low, right by my ear. "You okay?" I nodded, not turning. "Yeah. Just needed to breathe." That's when he placed his hand on my lower back. Just a small touch. Light. But it burned. I froze. He didn't say anything else. Just let his fingers rest there, soft, but intentional. His thumb rubbed in a slow circle. I should have moved. I should have stepped away. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned into it. I closed my eyes, and for a few seconds, the only thing I felt was him. His presence. His warmth. His skin on mine. That was the moment everything changed. But before I tell you how deep I got into this, how this little touch turned into secret meetups and stolen nights, you already know what to do. Backhand index pointing right medium skin tone. Please like this video, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Trust me, it gets wild from here. Backhand index pointing left medium skin tone. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. I met Sierra in nursing school. We were roommates for a year and clicked instantly. She's the loud one, funny, bold, fearless. I'm quieter, more calculated. I always did what I was supposed to do. Married my college boyfriend, got the job, had the house. People look at me and see, stable. Sierra, on the other hand, lived in chaos. She jumped from job to job, man to man, adventure to adventure. But I loved her for it. She made me feel alive just by being near her. And for the longest time, I lived through her stories, late-night dates, steamy weekends, drunk texts from balconies in Miami. Until she brought Darius around. The first time I saw him, he walked into her apartment holding a bottle of wine in one hand and her waist in the other. He was tall, dark, confident. He had that kind of walk, the slow, deliberate kind that made people pause. I told myself he wasn't my type. I told myself to look away. But the way his eyes scanned the room and landed on me, I felt it. Something electric. Quick. Dangerous. "Hey," he said with that deep voice of his. "So you're the famous best friend." I smiled. "And you must be the one she hasn't shut up about for a week." He laughed, and I remember thinking his laugh was smooth, like melted chocolate. "Easy." He reached out his hand. "Darius." His fingers closed around mine a little longer than necessary. He didn't squeeze too hard. He didn't have to. He looked at me in a way I wasn't used to being looked at anymore. Not by my husband, that's for sure. And just like that, he was in our circle. Game nights, brunches, little getaways. And every time, I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I could handle the way he smiled at me when Sierra wasn't looking, the way his eyes followed me when I wore dresses a little too short, or how his voice dipped just a little lower when we were alone. But I lied to myself. A lot. That night in Sierra's kitchen, after his hand lingered on my back for just a little too long, I turned to face him. "I'm married," I whispered, though I'm not sure why. He already knew that. "I know," he said. He didn't remove his hand. "You're dating my best friend." "I know that too." Silence. Thick. Heavy. The only sound was the hum of the fridge and a slow R&B track coming from the speakers in the next room. "I shouldn't be here," I muttered. But you are. His words weren't cocky. They weren't even seductive. They were honest. Calm. Like he'd been thinking this over and over again in his mind and decided tonight was the night he'd let it show. I moved first. Just a step. A stupid, small step closer. He let his hands slide from my back to my hip, then back again. We didn't kiss. Not that night. But something passed between us. Something unspoken but loud. I left before it could go further. But the damage was already done. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to my husband, feeling cold and empty, playing that kitchen scene in my mind on a loop. I knew something had begun. Something I couldn't control. And something I would never admit out loud. Not to Sierra. Not to him. Not even to myself. The next day, I got a text from him. Darius, you left too quick last night. I stared at it for an hour before I replied. Me, did I? He didn't say anything else. But he didn't need to. Because I felt it. This was only the beginning. I should have looked away the second he walked into the room. It was a bright Sunday afternoon when Sierra invited me to brunch. She said it was just the three of us. I didn't ask who the third person was. I already knew. And when I pulled up to her apartment and saw Darius's car parked right next to hers, my stomach flipped like I was some teenage girl sneaking around again. I almost turned around. But I didn't. I walked in like everything was normal. Like I wasn't still thinking about his hand on my back. Like I hadn't saved and reread his message a dozen times. Like I didn't wake up aching with guilt, and something else I didn't want to name. Sierra opened the door, barefoot, mimosa already in hand. You're late, bitch. I laughed and hugged her, pretending I wasn't scanning the room for him. And then he appeared. In the kitchen. Wearing a black t-shirt, sweatpants that hung dangerously low on his waist, and that same damn smirk that knew all my weaknesses. He leaned against the counter, sipping coffee, and said, "Hey, stranger." I gave him a nod. Hey. That was all. Just hey. But everything under that single word was loaded. Tension. Memory. Need. Sierra was too busy being Sierra to notice the way I avoided eye contact, or how he held mine just a little too long. We sat down to eat. Pancakes, eggs, sausage, fruit salad. Sierra always overdid it. She talked about her job, the drama at her office, her plans for a summer trip to the Keys. I smiled, nodded, sipped my mimosa, while Darius sat across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table. Not hard. Just enough. I looked at him once, and he didn't flinch. He just kept chewing like he wasn't sending my body into a silent storm. And the worst part? I didn't move my leg away. After we finished eating, Sierra said she was going to take a shower, left us alone in the living room. I stood up to help clear the plates, and he followed me into the kitchen. You look good, he said, standing way too close behind me. I didn't turn around. You shouldn't say things like that. But it's true. I closed my eyes. Darius. He came closer. Tell me you didn't feel that. Last night. The way you leaned into me. I turned to face him, plate still in my hand. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but hungry. I don't want to be this girl, I whispered. You already are. We stared at each other in that quiet, pulsing moment. My heart was hammering in my chest. And then Sierra shouted from the hallway, "Don't drink all the champagne without me." We broke apart instantly. But something had already snapped between us. We couldn't go back. Weeks passed. We didn't text. Didn't call. But we saw each other. Always around Sierra. Birthday dinners, house parties, movie nights. And every time, the tension grew thicker. Every time, I told myself this would be the last time I allowed myself to feel anything. But then came the cabin trip. Sierra had booked it for her birthday. A weekend getaway in the woods with 6 of us, 3 couples. Me and my husband. Sierra and Darius. And another couple, friends from her job. The cabin was big, cozy, and beautiful. Fire pit outside, hot tub, full bar. The first night was fun, drinking, playing games, dancing. Then we played Truth or Dare. That stupid, dangerous game that should have been left in high school. Sierra was drunk, laughing hard, already tipsy off her 3rd tequila shot. When it came to my turn, I picked Truth. Darius was the one asking. He looked straight at me and said, "What's a secret you've never told anyone?" I hesitated. Everyone was watching. I forced a laugh. "Y'all are messy." "I can't say that." Sierra egged me on. "Come on. Spill it." But Darius just smiled and said, "Whisper it in my ear, then." Everybody oohed and laughed. So I leaned in close. My lips barely an inch from his ear. I whispered, "I dreamt of kissing you." His eyes widened a little. His mouth twitched into the smallest smirk. But he didn't say a word. I pulled back and shrugged like it was nothing. But it wasn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. My husband was snoring beside me in the tiny room Sierra gave us, and I was lying there in the dark, heart pounding. I slipped out of bed, made my way to the kitchen for water. The cabin was silent, except for the creak of wooden floors and the distant hum of wind outside. I reached the fridge. And then I felt him. Again. "Couldn't sleep either," he said. I turned, startled. Darius stood shirtless, wearing only sweatpants. His eyes were sleepy, but sharp. "I needed water," I mumbled, stepping aside. He poured himself a glass, took a slow sip, and leaned on the counter. "You weren't lying," he said. "About what?" "That dream." I swallowed. "No." Silence fell again. Heavy and thick. He stepped closer. I didn't move. "We can't," I whispered. "I know." And then his fingers grazed my wrist. Slowly, up to my elbow. My breath hitched. He leaned down, close to my ear. "But I want to." My knees went weak. I should have walked away. I should have reminded him I'm married. I should have reminded myself. But I didn't. I just stared at him, breathing hard, my pulse a drum in my throat. He leaned in, our lips almost touching. Then I pulled away. Fast. "I can't," I said, voice shaking. He didn't stop me. I walked back to my room, heart racing, skin tingling, a fire burning in places I hadn't felt alive in years. If you're still watching this, I hope you've liked and subscribed, because things are just starting to heat up. What happened the next night changed everything. I told myself it was just going to be a little flirtation, but I lied. It happened the next night. And I swear, I didn't go looking for it. After what almost happened in the kitchen, I told myself I'd spend the rest of the weekend glued to my husband. I figured if I acted normal enough, maybe the tension between me and Darius would fizzle out. Maybe I could pretend it was just in my head. Just a fantasy sparked by boredom or loneliness or a lack of attention at home. But lies have a way of feeding on silence. The second day at the cabin was calm, hiking, breakfast on the patio, a card game that got competitive fast. I stayed close to my husband, trying to anchor myself. But every time I laughed at his joke or laid my head on his shoulder, I felt Darius's eyes. He was watching. Always watching. And I hated how much I liked it. That evening, Sierra insisted we all get in the hot tub before dinner. "No phones, no drama, no clothes," she screamed, already drunk. I rolled my eyes. "You're not getting me naked with this crew." She giggled. "Fine, fine. Swimsuits only. But don't act like a grandma." I wore a simple black one-piece. Nothing revealing. But it didn't matter. When I stepped onto the patio and saw Darius sitting in the corner of the hot tub, shirtless, arms stretched out along the edge, looking like temptation carved in flesh, I felt naked. My husband was already in, laughing with the others. I slid in quietly, trying to stay on the opposite side. But fate, or maybe weakness, had other plans. Eventually, as people shifted and moved, I ended up right beside him. Our thighs touched underwater. I held my breath. He leaned close, whispering through the steam, "You're trying too hard." I turned. "What?" "To pretend you don't want me." I swallowed. "This isn't a game. It doesn't feel like one." That night, everyone passed out early. Too much food, too much booze, too many bad karaoke performances. My husband was snoring by 11 p.m. I laid beside him, staring at the ceiling. Awake. Burning. I told myself not to move. I told myself to stay right where I was. To be good. To be loyal. To be decent. But I wasn't any of those things anymore. At 1:17 a.m., I slipped out of the room barefoot, heart pounding so loud I could hear it echo in my ears. The hallway was dark. Cold. I didn't know where I was going. Not really. But when I reached the guest bedroom at the end of the hall, and saw his door cracked open, and the soft light spilling out, I didn't stop myself. He was sitting on the edge of the bed in sweatpants and nothing else, phone in his hand, head down. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised. He just said, "Close the door." And I did. The silence was thick. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at him. Everything in me screamed to run. But he stood, walked up to me slowly, and placed one hand on my cheek. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered. And I didn't. Because my mouth was already on his. We didn't rush. It wasn't wild or rough like I imagined it would be. It was slow. Careful. Almost worshipful. He kissed every inch of my neck like he had dreamt about it 1,000 times. His hands moved down my back, over my hips, pulling me closer. My breath came in broken pieces. My swimsuit peeled away in silence. His sweatpants dropped to the floor. And then it was skin on skin. Heat on heat. His mouth found places my husband had long forgotten. He touched me like he was trying to read my entire life story with his fingers. And I let him. I let him do things to me I hadn't felt in years. I arched for him. Moaned into his neck. Bit my lip to keep from crying out too loud. I felt wanted. Seen. Dangerous. I felt alive. Afterwards, I laid on my back staring at the ceiling, my body still humming. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered. "But you are." I turned to face him. "I can't do this again." "Okay," he said. But we both knew it was a lie. The next morning, I left his room before sunrise. Slipped back into bed like nothing happened. My husband didn't stir. At breakfast, Sierra talked non-stop about her hangover, and Darius sat across from me, calm as ever, sipping his coffee like he hadn't just taken me apart the night before. And I smiled like nothing had changed. But everything had. That night didn't end anything. It started everything. Because once I had a taste of him, I couldn't stop. The texts started first. Then the late night calls. Then the secret meetups. Hotel rooms. Parking lots. Back seats. Corners of his apartment Sierra never noticed. And I hated how good it felt. Every lie I told my husband made me hate myself more. Every hug I gave Sierra made me want to scream. But I couldn't stop. I'd look in the mirror and see a stranger. A woman who had thrown away everything decent for a man who didn't even belong to her. But I didn't care. Because when he touched me, I forgot who I was. Still here? Still listening? Backhand index pointing right medium skin tone. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is only the middle of the story. It's not over yet. The day Sierra told me she trusted me with her whole heart, I almost choked on the guilt I'd been swallowing for weeks. We were at a nail salon. Pedicures, wine, gossip, just another Saturday ritual. She had no idea I'd been in bed with her man the night before. No clue that while she was out at work or running errands or talking to Darius on the phone, I was tangled up in his sheets, breathing his name into the dark. And then she looked at me, all soft-eyed and tipsy off Rose, and said, "Girl, I don't think I could survive half the shit I've been through without you." I laughed, because what else could I do? She smiled, wiggled her toes, and added, "You're the only person I trust. For real. With my life. With him." And that? That nearly broke me. Because I had no right. No damn right at all. I thought about ending it. For real this time. I told Darius we needed to stop. That it was getting too dangerous. Too reckless. He stared at me, jaw tight, leaning back against the hood of my car in a dark parking lot behind his gym. "You said that last time. And I meant it. And you came back." I looked down. Couldn't meet his eyes. He reached for my hand. "You don't want to stop. You want to be caught." "No," I snapped, yanking away. "That's the one thing I can't let happen." "Then stop pretending this is just sex." I froze. Because he was right. Somewhere along the line, it had stopped being just sex. I thought about him when I cooked dinner for my husband. I thought about him when Sierra sent me selfies of them on date nights. I thought about him in the shower, in my car, even in my dreams. He had invaded every part of me. And I let him. That same week, Sierra planned a small dinner at her apartment. Just us four, me, my husband, Darius, and her. The tension was unbearable from the minute we walked in. My husband, as usual, was too distracted to notice. He spent most of the evening scrolling through work emails and answering calls from his office. Darius was too quiet. Too still. I tried not to look at him. But every time I did, it felt like a sin. Dinner was pasta, wine, and laughter that sounded hollow in my ears. And then it happened. Under the table. I felt his foot touch mine. Just a graze. I pulled away, heart racing. Then his knee pressed into mine. Slow. Deliberate. I glanced across the table. Sierra was telling some wild story about her coworker's breakup. Darius looked up, met my eyes, and slid his hand under the table. And then I felt it. Fingers, brushing along the inside of my thigh. I nearly dropped my fork. Every nerve in my body screamed. But I didn't move. I didn't stop him. I let his fingers slip higher. The tablecloth hiding the betrayal we were cooking right in front of their blind eyes. Sierra laughed. My husband checked his phone. And I sat there, wet and shaking, with another man's hand between my legs. Feet away from the two people who trusted us the most. What kind of woman does that? Me. I do. After dinner, my husband left early for a late meeting. Sierra pulled out wine and begged me to stay for a girls' night. I agreed, hoping Darius would leave too. But of course he didn't. We watched a movie on the couch, me in the middle, Sierra to my right, Darius to my left. Sometime during the film, Sierra fell asleep, wine glass half full in her hand, head resting on a pillow. I didn't move. I could feel Darius beside me, close, too close. He leaned in, lips brushing my ear. I can't keep doing this in silence. I whispered, "She's right there. She's always going to be right there." I shook my head. "You need to leave. I want you. You can't have me." But I do. That night, I didn't go home. I told Sierra I was too tired to drive and crashed on her couch. At 3 a.m., I snuck into the guest room. He was already there. We didn't speak. He just pulled me into his arms, like he'd been waiting all night. And we broke every rule all over again. The next morning, Sierra made breakfast. Bacon, eggs, fresh toast. She danced around the kitchen in her robe, singing old Beyoncé, flipping pancakes. She looked happy. At peace. In love. And I hated myself. Every time she said Darius's name, I flinched. Every time she kissed his cheek, I looked away. Then, she leaned on the counter, looked at both of us, and said, "You know, I always worried about other women. But never with you." She smiled at me. "I know he's handsome, but I don't worry. Because I trust you." That word again. Trust. Like a knife twisting in my gut. Later that day, I sat in my car outside her apartment, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked like me. But her eyes were darker. Wilder. Emptier. And then my phone lit up. "Darius, you feel it too. Don't lie to yourself." I didn't answer. But I didn't block him either. Because deep down, I wanted more. Megaphone, if you've made it this far, you already know what to do. Like this video. Share it. Subscribe to the channel. I think about her every time I close my eyes. Her laugh. Her loyalty. Her trust in me. And it haunts me. But not enough to stop. Sierra and Darius eventually broke up. That was her decision, not mine. She told me over wine one night, curled up on my couch with puffy eyes and a scratchy voice. "He's distant. He doesn't talk to me the same. He barely touches me anymore." I wanted to cry too. Because I was the reason. She sobbed into my shoulder, and I rubbed her back like I cared. No. That's wrong, I did care. Just not enough to confess. She sniffled and looked up at me and said, "I kept thinking maybe he was seeing someone else. But he swore it wasn't that." I blinked. Stayed quiet. She looked into my eyes and said, "And honestly, even if he was, I just didn't expect it to feel like this." I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. After they ended things, I didn't see Darius for a while. I figured that was it. We had crossed the line too many times. The guilt had drowned me so deep I could barely breathe. My marriage was ice cold. My husband barely noticed me, and even if he did, I didn't want to be seen. I avoided Darius's messages. Blocked him, unblocked him. Read his name 1,000 times on my screen without replying. I kept telling myself it was done. But I didn't believe it. Then, one night, weeks later, I saw him again. It was random. Or maybe not. He showed up at my job. He waited in the parking lot until my shift ended. When I stepped out and saw him leaning against his car, arms folded, wearing that look that had once made my knees weak, I froze. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Waiting. You shouldn't be here. I had to see you. I should have turned around. I should have gotten in my car and driven home. But I didn't. I got in his car instead. We didn't even talk much. The second the doors closed, he kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. And I kissed him back like I forgot who I was. We didn't wait. We didn't waste time. We drove to the same cheap hotel we used to sneak to, the one on the west side with tinted windows and no questions asked at the front desk. Room 103. Same as before. We barely made it to the bed. Clothes on the floor. Breathless moans. His hands everywhere. That night, it felt different. Slower. Softer. Like goodbye. Afterwards, we laid there, tangled up, skin on skin. His fingers tracing circles on my back. He whispered, "If it wasn't for her, I would have chosen you." And I hated how much that hurt. Because even though she was out of the picture, even though he was mine in that moment, I knew he never really was. He didn't belong to me. And I didn't belong to anyone anymore, not truly. I rolled over, facing the ceiling. She still doesn't know. Would you tell her? I shook my head. Never. Why? Because some things deserve to stay buried. He looked at me for a long moment. Do you regret it? I thought about that. About the nights. The touches. The lies. About how alive he made me feel in all the places I thought were numb forever. I turned to him. No, I whispered. I don't regret it. But I'll never tell her. The next morning, I went home and showered for an hour. Scrubbed myself raw. My husband asked if I wanted breakfast. I said no. He asked how my shift went. I lied. Then I kissed him on the cheek and said I was going to take a nap. I laid in bed, eyes open, heart racing. And all I could think was, I got away with it. Weeks turned into months. I never saw Darius again. He moved away, or maybe just disappeared from our circle. Sierra started dating someone new, a sweet guy, boring as hell. She says he's safe. I tell her I'm happy for her. She still texts me every day. Still calls me sis. Still swears I'm the one person who's never let her down. And I let her believe it. Because the truth? It would destroy her. And me. So I live with it. With the secret. With the memory. With the nights that play in my head like a movie on loop. Sometimes I wonder if Darius ever thinks about me. Sometimes I hope he doesn't. Sometimes I still miss him. But here's the part nobody ever talks about. Sometimes the worst things we do are the ones we enjoy the most. And sometimes the people we betray are the ones who'll never even know. So yeah. I slept with my best friend's boyfriend. More than once. And no, I don't regret it. But I'll never tell her. Not in this life. Speech balloon. If you've made it to the end of this confession, thank you for listening. Backhand index pointing right, medium skin tone. Like this video. Share it. Subscribe to the channel. You never know who's hiding secrets just like mine.